Hello, BookTube. I've got a tiny bit of mail for you today. It was a good mail day, but I opened a lot of it off camera, which is wrong. I know it's wrong, and I'm sure that I will end up showing a lot of those books anyway. But I realized at the last minute that there was a little stuff left, one package and one periodical, and I realized that the other day I made a one package mail haul about one book. And I talked not only about the book, but about the logistics of how you would pitch it to an editor, how you would go about reviewing it. And a lot of you like that. It reminded me that a lot of you have always liked that when I've done that with just one book, when we've talked about the practicalities of getting that book not as a reader, but as a reviewer. Now, I had a lot of emails about that last video, which was the last time I did this, which was about that Tolkien book. And quite a few of you echoed complaints that I've heard from other quarters, more loquacious quarters, which is that there seems to be no one hiring, no one out there willing to take these things, no matter what. I admit I haven't really kept up to date with that world. As some of you have pointed out in the last couple of years, my for-pay deadline reviewing in the outside world has diminished, voluntarily diminished. I had a wonderful berth for 10 years at the Christian Science Monitor here in Boston, and I loved it, but those things change. Unless you have remarkable luck, so that you were at the Wall Street Journal for 50 years, unless you have remarkable luck, those things change. Your editor dies, the section downsizes, the publisher decides there isn't money or interest, want to go in a different direction, listicles, whatever it is, you can't take it personally. Those things change. You're lucky if you can ride out a berth for 10 years, and I've done that twice in 20 years. So I'm not complaining. But also the whims of it, the vagaries of it, all that element of it. Sure, it's wonderful to appear in the Boston Globe, but, well, I shouldn't say but in response to the Boston Globe, because the last time I dealt with them a few years ago, they were wonderful. I pitched like 4 or 5 different things. They took them all instantly and gave me the front of the book section with beautiful original artwork. I can't complain about that. But a lot of you have been complaining to me in that video about the Tolkien book, saying, you know, my local or quasi-local newspaper does occasionally run book reviews, and I sent an email asking, you know, about can I maybe do that, and got back nothing. The got back nothing part doesn't surprise me, as I have yelled about on this channel many times before. The journalism world, the soft journalism world of features and editorials and arts and books has very much adopted the idiotic, absolutely absurdly rude approach that no reply is the new not interested. When that is not the case, those are apples and oranges. Not interested is the new not interested. No reply is you just being rude. I sympathize with all of you who have thought about that. I have 2 things to recommend, to slight recommendations. Number one is that I myself am the editor of an online literary journal called Open Letters Review. It's the successor to Open Letters Monthly, which ran for 10 years. The people on the masthead of Open Letters Review will be known to you. Some of them will be known to you by name. And we're good. And we are not exclusive. We don't pay, except in review copies, but we will not shut the door because you have no experience or because we've never heard of you before. So you could try that. That is a piece of advice number one, is you could get in touch with me about trying to review books for Open Letters. Keeping in mind a few precepts of the industry. Right? Because Open Letters Review might be open to newcomers, but it is not Lothlorien. It exists in the industry. That's why we get so many book cover blurbs, because we are a professional journal. And there are a few givens in the professional world. I've gone over them on this channel before. Might not hurt to go over them again. Maybe I should make a video of that regard. One thing that jumps right out is you play by the journal's rules, not by your own. You don't expect the journal to abide by your rules. If they won't. Open Letters is an unconventional journal, online only, free, and it will not. Meaning that if you're looking at a venue, like, let's say, Open Letters Review, that publishes 800-word book reviews of new releases. Well, if you write to me and say, hi, I love your channel, I'd love to run something for Open Letters Review, here is my 8,000 word meditation on William Gass, not only am I going to say we're not interested, I'm also going to think, I won't say it to you, but I will think privately, what a jerk, wasting my time. Have any idea how many emails I get every day? You made me open this, and now I have to respond to it when you're just being a jerk. You know perfectly well we don't run stuff like what you're proposing. You want to be the exception. You're not going to be the exception. That would be one thing. Of course, hand in hand with that would be another industry standard, which is that you don't argue with your editor. And if you submit something to Open Letters Review, you are submitting to me being your editor. Now, I think if you talk to people who write for Open Letters Review regularly, they won't have much negative to say about me as an editor. But you don't argue with your editor. If you send me something that's 2,000 words long and I say, well, this is too long, I don't want to hear from you that an internationally published critic who has a shelf full of awards and who's 90 ran a 2,000 word piece in Open Letters Review. That's an argument, and I don't want to hear an argument like that. If you send me a 2,000 word piece about given a new book, I'm going to write back and say, well, this is good, but it needs to be a third this length. Can you cut it down to 800 words? Thereabouts. Maybe 1,000. When I do that, I'm phrasing it as a question, but it's really, take it or leave it. You don't respond to that by saying, well, so-and-so wrote a 2,000 word. That constitutes arguing with your editor. So you don't do that. But anyway, you are perfectly welcome to do that, to try your hand at reviewing books at Open Letters Review. That is one response that I have to all those emails I got from people saying there just don't seem to be any openings. I realize that it's dire, and I sympathize with that. And the other suggestion that I have is that maybe you and I could work together. If you don't want to do this for Open Letters, then maybe you and I could work together, come up with some sort of strategy. It wouldn't be a question of me parlaying access to someone by name. Like I said, I've been out of that game for a while, so I wouldn't do that anyway. But I wouldn't be able to do it anyway in any conventional way. Most people move on pretty quick. But we could strategize. It would at least help to have another person thinking about it with you. I sympathize. But anyway, that's what we're going to do this time around. We're going to talk about the one book, and also the periodical, which is the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement, which doesn't have anything really fiery in the letters page this time around. There's the usual go-around about stylistic analysis, where you go at Henry VIII by William Shakespeare, and you study the use of words in conjunction with other words, the use of whole phrases, the things like that, quotidia like that. You put that into a Bill James type meat grinder in order to see, okay, we're told the Shakespeare story says that he wrote Henry VIII late in his life, after a lifetime of writing. So which is more likely? That in Henry VIII he suddenly uses this 6-word phrase that he's never used before in his whole writing career, or that William Fletcher helped him to write the play and used that phrase like he had done 6 times before in his writing career. Stylistic analysis like that. It's a little soulless, I agree, but there's definitely something to it. And there's a brouhaha going on in the letters page that's bound to continue about whether or not it's a valid way to analyze text, whether or not it's a valid way to assign co-authorship. I'll touch on that if it comes to it, if it continues to grow. But I looked elsewhere in this issue. Like, for instance, Evan Jones reviews the new biography of Constantine Cavafy, which I just recently did. I just recently reviewed that myself on Open Letters. So naturally, I'm curious to know if we agree or don't agree. And there are a couple of books here that are me-wanties. A couple of books I saw that I really want. There's one by Neil Root from the History Press about the Cleveland Street scandal. See that? The Cleveland Street scandal happened in the reign of Queen Victoria, and I very much want a new book on it. I very much do, since it may or may not have involved Prince Albert Victor. I have a book on the Cleveland Street scandal, but it's decades old. I don't know what more has been learned or theorized about it, and I don't know if the History Press will send it to me. But I very much want it. And I couldn't help but notice the Cleveland Street scandal was a scandal because it was a male brothel. And it seems like some fairly high-placed members of British aristocracy or government frequented it. That's the scandal. There was a male brothel, and the subtitle of this review is "A Victorian Scandal Covered Up by the Authority." Oh no, the subtitle of the book. The book is called "The Cleveland Street Scandal," and the subtitle is "How the Victorian Establishment Was Almost Brought to Its Knees." Sorry, I'm fairly childish, but there's another thing in here. There's another thing in here that I want, and not for myself. I don't want it for myself. I want it for Joe Spivey. I did not know that Nicola Sturgeon wrote a memoir. I did not know that she did that. That is like throwing meat to the lions at the zoo for Joe Spivey. So I need to talk to him about that. See if I can get a copy for him, or maybe somehow reimburse him if he goes to his local shop and gets one himself. I can't have Nicola Sturgeon write a memoir and him not review it. I can't do that. But anyway, that's the periodical. Now we'll move on to the book. This is one of these big white packages, so it may be a finished copy. If that's true, that will alter the landscape of our discussion of possible reviewing. Because if you get a finished copy, there's very little you can do. Yeah, this is a finished copy. Okay, well, but we've heard about this earlier. We saw this earlier. So this comes out in late September, third week in September. So if you're getting this cold, then there's no way. Other than Open Letters Review. Something like Open Letters Review, maybe the LA Review Books or something like that. But a print journal with actual, industrial deadlines, if you're getting something on the 26th of August in a finished copy that's coming out on the 16th of September, then you're too late, because the book section editor of wherever you're pitching has long since made their September schedule. They've also made their October schedule and are probably pretty sure about November as well. So there would be no use pitching this book to them. But this is Adam Nicholson, and this is his book, Bird School. This is the finished copy of his book, Bird School, A Beginner in the Wood. When celebrated writer Adam Nicholson moved to a farm in southern England, he set out to learn how to transform it into a refuge for birds. In doing so, he discovered not only their personalities, the intricacies of how they navigate the world, and the devastating human impact on so many of their ways of life, but also the intimacy with which human enterprise and the natural world are braided together. Readers will enter this book through his backyard and find themselves in a story that spans countries, species, and generations. And I love this author. I love reading what he writes, so I will be reviewing this in September. I don't have the time, and it wouldn't be fair to foist this on any freelancer for so short a time. No, you would need a longer lead time, and you have the means to do that. NetGalley is a site online that gives you the means to do that with very little effort. You can get an account on NetGalley and start getting approved for galleys months ahead of time. I don't know how many of those galleys would be of interest to paying editors down the road, but the thing is, with NetGalley, like with most things, you can improve your lot by steady work. So you go onto NetGalley with no published reviews, make an account, look around for what publishers are giving review copies to people anyway, and what you do is you review them, a paragraph, 2-paragraph reviews for those books on NetGalley. I have never reviewed a book for NetGalley. That's why I don't really use my account anymore, because they want you to review books on their site. I'm not going to do that. When I have other places to review books, I'm not going to do that. But you might not have other places. And the key to doing that, yes, you are giving free content to a website that is amassing it. And I ordinarily rail against that. But with NetGalley, the thing is, the more reviews you write, just 2 paragraphs, the more reviews you write of the more books you borrow, the more access you get to other publishers on NetGalley. They see that, they rank that, they rate you for that, and gradually you start to get access to more books, to the point where you are getting pretty much anything you ask for. Well, if you get a galley copy of what is going to be a major new release from Viking in December, then you have that galley copy and you can pitch that to an editor. In the real world, you could still write 2 paragraphs for NetGalley. I wouldn't if I were you, but you could. But you can pitch that. That's legitimate. A lot of this, if you're brand new and you don't have any qualifications and you set up an account on NetGalley, probably a lot of the stuff you'll get will be quasi-indie and very low-calorie. Editors wouldn't be interested in it anyway. But if you're consistent on NetGalley, if you show the algorithm there that you do the work, you'll start getting approved for bigger and bigger things until finally you're approved for everything, in which case there are a huge number of fall and winter new releases that will show up there that you could pitch to an editor. And I will help you with that too. I'd be happy to. But this actually doesn't work as a good example because this, if you're just getting this cold, there's, aside from an example that shows that I was right and that the fad for 2025 in the US is hideous covers, aside from that, that is just unbelievably ugly. And also there's the fact that orange is the color of fascism. So don't make your book orange. Unless you're appealing to fascists. And fascists go out walking in the woods to shoot birds, not to look at them. But anyway, this doesn't really help you except for open letters. But maybe next time will. And next time I'll try to be better behaved about not opening packages off camera. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. A whole video about nothing. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.